Southern Charm meets Seaside Sparkle. Let's bead and see. Howdy, I'm Dina. I'm a pharmacist and a jewelry designer, bringing you the next project in my personal challenge series. I'm using every single bead from the June 2025 Magical Mystery bead box called Southern Shores. Today's feature, the Southern Shores strand, transformed into a beautiful necklace that's perfect for summer. Alright, so for this necklace that we're going to do for project number 3, I am actually going to just string on these beads in this order, just like this. The only difference is that I'm going to add some 8-ohs in between the majority of these beads, not all of them. We'll figure out if we're going to add 8-ohs or not. Like this one right here, this guy has a pretty large hole, as you can see, so 8-ohs are going to be able to fit through that. So we'll end up having to put some 8-ohs to where this will hover over the 8-ohs itself. But I'm essentially going to leave these beads in this order, and then we'll see what happens. And figure out what I did with my wire cutters. We're going to cut this off the strand, and then I'm just going to lay them on the mat in the order that they already are in, hopefully without making a mess. Alright, so this kind of went down to the bottom of my mat. So we're going to try to get these just to come off just like that, and hopefully it stayed just about right. Alright, so put that off to the side. Okay, so we're going to start with stringing on our spool. I already have just the wires just sitting on the spool, and then we're going to start stringing. Which side do I need to start at? I probably need to start so I don't have to go backwards. This is like wrapping up on me weird. Sorry, I'm dealing with stuff off camera there. Alright, so we're going to start off with this. I'm not going to put a 8-oh in between these two guys. I'm just going to leave these just the way they were, just like that. So that way, because if you put an 8-oh in between it, you're still not going to see it anyway. So I'm going to just leave that just as it is. Then we'll pick up this. The next thing are the two gold washers. And let's see, is an 8-oh going to pass through that? No, I think it's just the right size to where it's not going to pass through. So now, should we put an 8-oh in between each, or leave it as is? Let's see what that looks like if it's between each. You really don't see it. So let's just leave it. Let's just leave the two spacers together, just like that. And then we'll put the 8-oh after that. Then we'll pick up our next spacer, which looks like it's a magnesite bead. Then we have another crystal. And then this, I think I might just do the same thing. Yeah, that stays there. You can still see a little bit there, but that kind of wobbles around a lot. Let's see. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. But I think I'm going to put this on next. That is a beautiful color. That is a really pretty color. And then we're going to put the other crystal spacer on after that. That way that little section kind of stays the same. Then we'll put on an 8-oh. Let's see, these are pretty neat because you can see through them. Now, if I can figure out where they put the hole, I think it might be this. This looks a little bit different than some of the other holes. And it's got one on the other side that's similar. If I can get it to go through, there we go. But that's pretty neat. You got the little beads that roll around in it. So that's pretty neat. this. Okay, so now we're coming up to our bead that is not going to be able to hold the 8/0s. So let's calculate how many of these beads we're going to need for us to have the beads basically float in the middle of the bead. So notice how I just picked up 4 seed beads and I'm just holding it up along the edge of the gold bead down here just to see how many beads would go across the edge of it. So about 4 is going to be about right. So we're going to add 4. Go ahead and add the big bead, and I'm going to go ahead and put another one on there. So that last one's going to be the one that's going to be in between the beads. So here's this. Pick up another seed bead. Now we're coming up on our little crocheted bead, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that the same. So put on the bead cap, the crocheted bead, which just looks like it's a probably plastic bead underneath, and then somebody crocheted around it. So it looks really nice, really cute. And then put the other bead cap on. And continue on the other side. So we ended up putting our extra spacer 8/0, and then we put 4 of our 8s to float in between this large gold bead. Well, if I can ever pick them up. There we go. And then we put on the extra 8/0 to go on the other side. So now we're going to put the large bead on for it to float. Now we put this guy on. And if I can get it to go through the other side. There we go. So there's that guy. Really interesting, pretty. Okay, and then we're coming up on our crystal. So we'll put the 8/0, then the crystal, then our beautiful turquoise crystal that we have in this strand. Put the other crystal rondelle on, another 8, the red crystal, an 8, our magnesite spacer, an 8, our 2 gold spacer beads, an 8, and then we end up with our small rondelle and our last bead cap. So now, really? Why am I having problems getting that on there? Okay. Goodness. Sometimes I wonder. So now, when you have this all sitting down, it looks like that. So it's kind of neat. It's a little different. You've got a little bit of space in between everything. So now I am probably going to break off, and then I'm going to figure out how many beads I'm going to add on either side to figure out what type of length that I want to do, because I have not figured that part out yet. So I'll do that off camera so I'm not having such a really long clip. And then I'll come back and I'll tell you how many beads and or about how much length and everything I'm going to add on either side. So I'll see you back in just a minute. Alright, so in order for this necklace to kind of sit in that sweet spot, is what some people like to say, which would be somewhere around an 18 to 20 inch necklace for myself, I'm going to add somewhere around 4 inches or so of seed beads around each end. So I ended up counting on the Miyuki color seed or size seed beads, which is a seed bead of choice that I usually use. I ended up counting out 48 of the 8/0 seed beads. And then that's going to be around about 4 inches. It's probably not exact, but it's going to be close. So I'm going to add my crimp tube like I already did. So we're going to crimp off this side, and then I'll show you how to measure off your necklace in order to have enough room to be able to add your 48 seed beads on the other side, and then plus some room to be able to add your crimp tube and be comfortable with it. Alright, so I moved my crimp tube down to the end of my necklace here and left myself a little loop because I'm going to add some jump rings. So I'm now going to crimp this down. So put the crimp tube in the center of your pliers and then you just squish down. Make sure that your wires are straight and that they're not crossed over before you crimp. Then when you do that, it should look like a little squared portion. And then put these 90 degrees, put them back in your pliers in the center and squish down. And then continue to do that by turning just a little bit each time. And then eventually you will have yourself a nice little ball of crimp. So now we need to cut off that excess. I keep putting everything in different places. Can't find them these days. Alright, so we're going to cut off the excess. And then now we have this part of the necklace done. So now what do you do if you're not familiar with it? How do you know how to cut off enough for the other end? You can lay your beads down, which this is kind of hard to do, laying it down like this. I usually hold it up in front of me and then measure it that way. So I'm going to try to do this as best I can, doing it down on the mat like this. So then that's going to be an approximate amount for the 48 beads. Then you're going to need to leave yourself about 2 to 3 inches or so for being able to be comfortable in order to add your wire guard, not wire guard. What are we doing? Crimping. And I'm having problems with these pliers. I think I messed them up on one of my previous projects. Might have to get some new pliers, new cutters. Alright, so then now you're set up to be able to have enough room to add your 48 beads and your crimp tube, and then you have about 2 to 3 inches or so left over to where you can make a loop, just like we did over here on this side. So go ahead and complete that portion, and then I will show you how to add the lobster clasp if you're not familiar, and we'll finish off our necklace in project number 3. Alright, so I decided to come back and show you how to crimp the other side, just in case you're new at crimping. Just like I am. I'm pretty new at doing necklaces in this way because I usually do bead weaving, which is thread and needle. So I'm still kind of new at this too, so just in case you're new like I am, then I'll come and show you how I learned how to finish off my necklace. So what I usually do is coil the necklace up some, and then that way it gets just enough of a spacing in between each of the beads for the beads to move around some, because you don't want this to be too tight. So I have the crimp tube already on the wire, so I'm just rolling the wire around to where it goes through the crimp tube, and then if I can get it to go back through one of the 8/0s, I'm going to go ahead and get it to do that. I think it's actually coming through several 8/0s. Okay, we'll do that. So usually 8/0s you can get the wire to go through a couple of times. Now what I'm doing to make the loop smaller, I'm holding on to the excess amount of the wire in my right hand. On my left hand, I'm using my left hand to make it tighter by pulling upwards like this. And when I do that, I tug down on the right hand side at the same time until I get the loop about the same as the other side over here. So it still needs to go just a little bit more. So it's still kind of a little bit bigger, but we also need to make sure that we have enough room in between the last bead and your crimp tube to where your pliers can get in there and it doesn't smush the bead that it's sitting next to. Oh, my wires got twisted around. So I'm trying to fix that real quick. Yeah, they did get twisted. Okay, so which side is which? Let's see. This side is supposed to be over here, like that. Okay. So I'm just tugging on the loop to figure out which side is which. And then I'm pulling on the excess, just like I was doing just a minute ago, to make the loop a little smaller. And I think that's about as good as we're going to get. It's handmade there again. Doesn't have to be exact, doesn't have to be perfect. Alright, so now I'm using the thickness of my nail, which I get my nails done so they're kind of thick. I'm using the thickness of my nail to be able to have a little bit of space in between that last bead and the crimp tube. So that way, when I put the pliers in there, it'll have enough room to be able to squish down that crimp tube without running into the bead next to it. So I'm going to go ahead and squish. And then see how that came out. Okay, that worked out okay. I think the wires are kind of crooked in there. And sometimes the crimp tube or the crimps still work even though your wires may be crossed over a little bit. It sometimes still works. It's taken me a second to get it back in the center again because those seed beads keep getting in the way. So that's all you do, is you just twist it around just like you do on the other side, the other crimp, until you don't feel any resistance anymore. And when that happens, that usually means you have a nice little ball of crimp. Go backwards a couple of times. Make sure that everything is twisting. There. And there we go. Have a nice little ball of crimp now. And then now I'm going to cut off the excess. And you can kind of test it, and you can see that your beads, minus these guys down here because they're going to roll around anyway, but your beads kind of have a little bit of leeway. They still move a little bit. They're not too tight. So we're working out pretty good so far. So now to finish off, you need 2 sets of pliers to open and close your jump rings. So I have a needle nose and a chain nose. You put your pliers on one side of the jump ring opening, put your other set of pliers on the other side, and you twist open. Pick which side that you want to be your lobster clasp side, and drop everything. Apparently that's my theme for today, is dropping everything I pick up. And then put your lobster clasp on. And then close that back by twisting it back closed. Then we're going to pick up our next little small jump ring. You don't have to put 2 jump rings on this one. I just do it just for symmetry basically. So I'm going to put on the small or the larger jump ring, and then put the small jump ring onto the other end of the necklace, and then you just close that part up. And then I'm going to do a double check on the large jump ring and make sure that guy is closed really good, which he looks like he's pretty good. So now, once you have this all connected together, you now have a completed project number 3. Alright, so we're going to call this maybe the appendix section because I messed up. So my dad always said especially when he would be building something with wood and everything, you always measure twice and cut once. And I measured once and cut, and it's too short. I forgot to kind of include that these beads are really large, and I never tried it on before I actually cut it, and I was like, okay, this will be fine. and it's really short. It's actually choker. So what do you do when that happens? If that ever happens to you, if you have spare chain, like I did, I have some nice chunky looking chain here, and I just cut off about 2.5, 3-inch piece. I think it's closer to 3 inches, a 3-inch piece of it. And I ended up trying it on again, and I was somewhere around in here. And I had just a little bit hanging off and everything. And it was sitting in that sweet spot, which is where I wanted it to be. So just note to everybody out there, especially those that are new to this, make sure you measure twice and then you cut. So just as a little tidbit there. So Appendix 1 taken care of. So now I have a completed project number 3 that has been modified to be able to fit in the way that I want it to fit. If you enjoyed this video and are looking for more inspiration, you can always go to that link that I have down in the description. That is a playlist of all sorts of different videos I've come out with already. So click on that and get yourself inspired. Don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button, as well as that notification bell, so that way you can get notified when I come out with my new videos. Thanks again everyone for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye now.